In an unexpected twist that could have profound repercussions for British politics, Zia Yusuf has announced his resignation as chairman of Reform UK, bringing to an end a tenure of just 11 months at the helm of the party. The statement was released on Thursday afternoon, in which Yusuf said, "Almost a year ago, I took on the role of chairman. Since then, I have worked full-time and without pay to advance the party, increasing its polling numbers from 14% to 30%, quadrupling its membership, and delivering historic results at the ballot box. However, I no longer believe that dedicating my efforts to promoting a Reform UK government is the best use of my time. Therefore, I am stepping down." Zia Yusuf, previously known as the co-founder of Velocity Black, an exclusive luxury concierge service, joined Reform UK shortly after the party made a significant breakthrough in the 2024 general elections, reclaiming 5 parliamentary seats. His arrival was seen as a strategic move to maintain that momentum, taking over from Richard Tice, who had stepped aside to facilitate Nigel Farage's return as party leader on June 3rd, 2024. But with his departure, Reform UK suffers yet another high-profile exit, its third in under a year, further fueling perceptions that the party's supposed stability is beginning to falter. One of the first internal tremors occurred after the 2024 elections, when Ben Habib, who held the role of co-deputy chairman, was abruptly removed from his position. Tensions had been rising ever since. In fact, following news of Yusuf's resignation, Habib didn't hold back and issued a scathing remark. "Thank God he's gone. For once I agree with him. His time was never well spent in that role." The reasons behind Yusuf's departure are not limited to personal differences with other senior figures. There is a broader context. The party has been rattled by various internal controversies. One of the most high profile was the suspension of MP Rert Lowe, representative for Great Yarmouth, who was accused of bullying staff members, an allegation he strongly denies. Nevertheless, the scandal only deepened the narrative of turmoil within the political formation. Nigel Farage addressed the resignation shortly after the announcement in an attempt to soften the media blow. He said, "I deeply regret Zia Yusuf's decision to step down. Just a week ago, I referred to him as one of the pillars of our success on May 1st. He is a very talented individual. Politics is tough and stressful, and clearly he's had enough. This is a significant loss, not only for the party, but for public life." Yusuf's resignation did not go unnoticed for another reason. It coincided with a new source of internal division: the controversial remarks by MP Sarah Pochin during a Prime Minister's questions session, in which she proposed banning the use of the burqa. Although Yusuf had been photographed just weeks earlier celebrating alongside Pochin and another MP, he reportedly called her comments absurd, further intensifying the rift between factions within the party. Yusuf's resignation is not merely a matter of titles or political strategies. It is a troubling sign that the cracks within Reform UK can no longer be concealed. What was once presented as a solid alternative to the traditional political establishment is now beginning to show visible signs of internal wear and fragmentation. The case of Sarah Pochin was particularly uncomfortable. Her proposal to ban the burqa ignited fierce debate both inside and outside Parliament. While some conservative sectors viewed the measure as a response to national security concerns, others, including members within the party, saw it as a political misstep that risked alienating key voters and unnecessarily fueling cultural divisions. Yusuf, who during his months at the helm tried to project a modern and pragmatic image of Reform UK, reportedly believed that such statements undermined the professionalization and electoral growth efforts he had been working so hard to promote. By describing Pochin's comments as foolish, he sent a clear message. He was no longer willing to be the face of a party at war with itself. Internally, many were already speaking of a clash of visions between those who wanted a more centrist, strategic, and competitive party, and those who favored a more combative and provocative tone closer to hardline populism. Despite his achievements, Yusuf was ultimately unable to mediate that tension. The consequences were swift. His departure not only leaves a vacuum in the party's leadership, but also raises serious questions about Nigel Farage's and the leadership team's ability to maintain cohesion, especially as the country heads toward another general election. The timing couldn't be more critical, and as the media and public interpret Yusuf's resignation as yet another symptom of internal disintegration, many within the party are beginning to ask themselves whether Reform UK can survive its own contradictions. Can a movement that defines itself as reformist truly reform itself from within? With Yusuf's departure, the party is not just losing a leader with strategic vision, but also one of the few figures capable of bridging the gap between Faraj's incendiary rhetoric and the more corporate modern image that some within Reform UK had hoped to project. To many, he represented the face of a more professionalized version of Reform UK, less focused on media noise and more oriented toward concrete results. But his resignation also exposes what several insiders had long been whispering, that the party's internal environment has become toxic, difficult to manage, even for experienced figures. Ideological rifts, clashing egos, and ongoing power struggles had made stable leadership virtually impossible. The tensions weren't just ideological. Multiple internal sources mentioned that Yusuf often felt isolated in decision-making processes, particularly when trying to rein in members whose provocative statements, in his view, jeopardized the party's broader growth. The Sarah Pochin episode was simply the final straw. Ironically, in terms of tangible results, Yusuf's leadership was objectively successful. Polls indicated steady growth, membership numbers surged, seats that once seemed out of reach were won. Yet within the party, those victories were not enough to shield him from internal sabotage. The pressure reportedly became so intense that Yusuf had considered resigning weeks earlier, but held off in hopes of staying through the next electoral cycle to avoid damaging the party's momentum. Ultimately, however, the lack of support from the party's inner circle and fresh episodes of communication chaos convinced him his time had come. Externally, news of his departure sparked immediate reactions. Some analysts interpret it as a clear message. Reform UK is not yet prepared to sustain the kind of leadership required to expand beyond its loyal base. More critical voices warn that the party is on a path toward irrelevance unless it resolves its internal fractures soon. Despite efforts to downplay the situation, Nigel Farage is well aware that Yusuf's resignation comes at the worst possible time. With elections looming, Reform UK now faces the urgent task of reorganizing, regaining stability, and preventing more key figures from abandoning ship. On a day that completely shook up the British political landscape, Zia Yusuf officially announced his resignation as chairman of Reform UK. An abrupt, though not entirely unexpected departure that lays bare what many had long been warning. The party's internal crisis is no longer a rumor, it's a boiling reality. Yusuf, who took on the leadership role just 11 months ago, stepped down with a blunt statement. Despite the progress achieved, increased polling numbers, a growing membership base, and electoral victories, he no longer sees investing time in the party as a productive cause. In other words, the results no longer justified the personal toll or the constant internal battle. To many, this resignation isn't just the loss of another party official, but the fall of the only figure capable of balancing two forces within Reform UK. On one hand, the more aggressive wing aligned with Nigel Farage's provocative style. On the other, a faction aiming to professionalize the movement and transform it into a serious electoral alternative, not just a media spectacle. Zia Yusuf represented the latter, a businessman, a strategist, data-driven and result-focused. And that vision within Reform UK seemed to find no place. This is not the first high-profile departure. Before Yusuf, figures like Ben Habib also left amid visible tensions, and with each exit the pattern repeats. Inflammatory statements, veiled accusations, mutual discrediting. The situation has deteriorated to the point that stability, once Reform UK's selling point against traditional parties, has now become its most glaring weakness. People no longer see a unified project, but a structure crumbling from within. And to make matters worse, the timing couldn't be worse. Elections on the horizon, a rapidly shifting political landscape, and a public increasingly skeptical of promises without tangible outcomes. Nigel Farage, the party's central figure, tried to contain the fallout with conciliatory remarks. He praised Yusuf, regretted his departure, but deep down, he too knows he's lost a key pillar of his expansion strategy. Because Yusuf didn't just bring image, he brought credibility among sectors that viewed Reform UK as a possible vehicle for channeling discontent with the system, without veering into extremism. The final trigger, a lawmaker and an incendiary statement. According to close sources, Yusuf's resignation wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. He had been considering it for weeks, but the recent incident involving MP Sarah Pochin was the final straw. Pochin proposed banning the burqa in public spaces, triggering a wave of backlash. While some inside the party supported her stance, Yusuf, who had shared a stage with her just days earlier, called her remarks absurd. In a party where radical stances are are often celebrated, that comment effectively closed doors for him. What should have been a space for diverse debate turned into a battleground of friendly fire, where those who didn't shout the loudest were silenced. The bigger picture, a project without direction, Reform UK was born as a force promising to break from the old politics. But today, with no clear direction, no internal discipline, and an increasingly polarizing discourse, it risks becoming a caricature of what it once set out to fight. Who takes control now? Who can fill the void left by ISEF? And more importantly, how do you rebuild trust, both inside and outside the party? Because media presence alone isn't enough. A strong name like Farage isn't enough. What's at stake is the real ability to become a viable option for government, and that requires something Reform UK now seems to have lost: coherence, strategy, unity. And now the key question is for you. Are we looking at a temporary crisis, or is this the beginning of Reform UK's collapse from within? Can Nigel Farage keep the ship afloat without sacrificing more key players? Let me know in the comments. Your opinion matters, and we want to hear what you think, not just what the mainstream media says. Leave a comment and share this analysis with someone who follows UK politics. Like the video if you value honest, unfiltered content. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming episodes where we reveal what others prefer to hide. Thanks for watching. See you next time.